All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got to have a heart to heart on this conversation. The 4070 is a better class rendering device than a PlayStation 5 Pro. All of the talk these past few months about the PS5 Pro matching the 4070 has been hogwash. I was patient enough nonetheless to say, at least let's go ahead and see the data. Let's see what's going on. I think maybe I was probably not fully transparent. I was just leading the conversation because when you actually go pound to pound or pound for pound, however you want to call it, a dedicated graphics card is always going to beat an APU. Why? It has the advantage of flexibility. Two, it has the capacity to do things that even an APU would not be even in the discussion. And number three, when the APU is AMD and the dedicated graphics card is NVIDIA's latest RTX, everybody knows that that's a slam dunk. At least anyone who is objective about the conversation and would like to basically see hardware being evaluated in the correct light that it should be. The Turk, whom I nicknamed the FPS accountant, made his new video and talked about the equivalent GPU for the PlayStation 5 Pro. You know what's really crazy? As he was making this video, the conclusion that he gave previously even to the PS5 Pro releasing is pretty much the same. So it's like he did all this song and dance to basically prove himself correct after proving himself correct. And believe you me, I was a little shocked as to how all of this has turned out because a lot of the noise died so fast and a lot of the folk dispersed so quickly that we're gathering together and making all this noise that right now it almost feels like there's no reason to even continue to evaluate these two hardware pieces. I think it would have been simpler for us if we just basically listened to hardware experts that said, if you want to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro for the sake of buying a PS5 Pro, by all means, buy yourself a PS5 Pro. However, anybody that was thinking a PlayStation 5 Pro was going to pretty much go neck to neck with a $600-700 GPU, well, I guess in some cases these days $500, that's what it will be, $500+. You're kind of joking. Now, when it's all said and done, if we had to draw conclusions, we have to ask ourselves, okay, so finally, where did this particular GPU land? It landed somewhere around a 6800 and a 3070, depending on what applications you're looking at. Do you know what's crazy though? With all of these data that's actually been put together, there are still people who want to continue to argue that somewhere, somehow, in some cases, a PlayStation game or some PlayStation games will run better than the 4070. And to that question I ask and say, so does that diminish the 4070? Does that make it less powerful than it is? Or does that make the PS5 grow more powerful? And some of them were crazy enough to say, yeah, in some cases, it makes the PS5 grow more powerful. And then I see a bunch of people in the comment section talking about how PlayStation's API is this, superior API, blah, 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 blah. And I laugh and I say, none of these folk have ever seen PlayStation's SDK, and they already have conclusions about how the API is this great and wonderful thing. Now, my conclusion in this particular instance, and having watched the video, is that number one, this video did not necessarily, correlate everything that I'm sure the Turk wanted to actually put here. I think he had more in terms of his thoughts that he would have put, but the video would have scaled way too long. So there's actually another video that's coming very soon, which is supposed to tie up a lot of things. But what I think, like I said, is very important in this conversation is how there are people that still continue to heckle over every single minutiae, of which each time they heckle, they get proven wrong because, again, most of them are not really well versed with the way hardware works. And they're not really too used to the kind of scrutiny that hardware can get from the PC side. And this is exactly what's going on. If you enjoy a PS5, enjoy it. And the best way to enjoy it is to enjoy it for you. The moment you come out and start raising a lot of these concerns and saying things like PC players are obsessed, PC players are jealous, they don't really know what's going on, that's when you start to draw analytical thinking to yourself, because all that is hogwash and nonsense talk that is coming out of these places. But if you think about this, he said, today I was called out that I was in fact testing the PS5 Pro wrong. Upon looking into the accusations, I wasn't. The user clearly has an agenda to push, so I called. And then they said, here's Hogwarts Legacy, 1800p with ultra preset and high RT at 42 FPS lighter. And then they went ahead and pretty much talked about how their analysis shows that this particular game, console is no match for the 4070. In fact, when I made my videos, at one point I laughed and said, with the Alan Wake thing, we don't even need to be calling the 4070 in the same conversation. The fact that Digital Foundry, who had already done the very first analysis, had to scale down the 4070's version in terms of resolution to even do the analysis was already the destruction of the PS5 in that comparison. And we saw a very similar perspective even down the road. So where is all this going? At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, optimization lands at the feet of the developer. Developers who do not spend the time optimizing their games, they really do put their product and their own gamers in a very interesting situation. This doesn't mean that, it's not good to get more powerful hardware. What it just means is, if you do not account for optimization, if you do not account for the fact that this is a developer level, situation, you're going to be lost and you're going to say things that are very weird. And when data and evidence is put in front of you, you're not going to want to believe it. I mean, if you want to believe that the 4070 and the PS5 Pro are the same, or they do, they raster the same way, you can, but the data and the evidence doesn't support it. Instead, if anything, that's a fantasy and a fairy tale, at the end of the day. So I'm waiting for the rest of the, analysis before I then, do what I think is kind of a wrap up, so we don't have to have this conversation anymore. Now, are consoles going to eventually reach the rasterization power of a 4070? Of course. No one is saying that they're not going to. In fact, the PS5 was already the, most ambitious, or the PS5 and Series X, they were already the more ambitious consoles out there. And they were somewhat impressive for what they could do. But they're not the end all be all. And as software development and software technology continues to grow and become more demanding, consoles just can't keep up because there's no modularity to them. Xbox, if they would make a modular console, they would end the entire console conversation, like in an instant, just like that. Even if people buy a PS6, they're eventually going to mid-generation go and say, why am I even trying to buy another piece of hardware when I can just upgrade? But I don't know if Xbox is going to do that. But hey, you don't know what they're trying to do. And with the FTC changing hands in terms of management, things may get really, really rough out here in terms of competition. Talk to me in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience. I know this particular conversation is one that has kind of died down. Even Digital Foundry themselves have kind of moved away. If you notice, they're no longer doing 4070 testing on their games. Has anybody noticed that? They did one with Alan Wake, and that was it. They stopped everything else immediately because it will be a bloodbath if they actually went ahead to start doing more 4070 comparisons, which is just not fair anyway. So there should be no need for them to be bothering doing it. But I digress. I'll talk to you all in the comment section. Like I said, thanks so much for watching. Peace out.